Department of Attorney General. Appreciate you joining us here this morning. If you will be seeking permission to record, now would be a great time to select that button, and we'll make sure that's granted. Apologies for a minor delay this morning. I think we are all good to go now. We will have some brief remarks from Attorney General Dana Nessel, and then turn it over for question and answer. We will be using the hands raised feature, and then calling on you verbally and asking you to unmute yourself, assuming all the tools and buttons work correctly. We are asking, out of respect for this topic, that we keep all our questions today germane to the charges being announced and the matter at hand. If you should have additional questions that either we don't have time to get to here or that don't occur to you until after we have adjourned from this space, please feel free to reach out to us at any time throughout the day at agpress@michigan.gov. We're here, we're on hand all day for whatever it is that you could be looking for on this topic or others. We are intending that everyone be muted. Should have entered in a muted state. If for whatever reason that is not the case, we'd greatly appreciate you muting yourself and ensuring that that is the case. And again, for the question and answer, we will be utilizing the hands raised feature, and my colleague Kim Bush will be calling on folks one by one. Without further ado, I believe we are set to begin. We received and granted several recording permissions. Again, if you wanted permission to record, would use this opportunity as a late and last moment to do so. Again, thank you all for joining us this morning, and I'll hand it over to Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel.
Thanks, Danny. Much appreciated. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm announcing criminal charges against 4 individuals in connection to the tragic death of a 5-year-old patient inside a hyperbaric chamber at the Oxford Center in Troy on January 31st. Let me first say at the outset, criminal charges are merely allegations, and all defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. Due to many failures by men and women who would call themselves medical professionals and wanton or willful disregard for the likelihood that their actions would cause the death of a patient, 5-year-old Thomas Cooper was killed when a fire erupted inside the pressurized, pure oxygen environment inside the chamber. A single spark, it appears, ignited into a fully involved fire that claimed Thomas's life within seconds. Fires inside a hyperbaric chamber are considered a terminal event. Every such fire is almost certainly fatal, and this is why many procedures and essential safety practices have been developed to keep a fire from ever occurring. The investigation into this tragedy has revealed how the Oxford Center in Troy and several of its key decision makers held safety among their lowest considerations in their hyperbaric treatment practice. Yesterday, 4 people were arrested in connection with the tragic killing of Thomas Cooper. My office has filed charges against the first 3 defendants with second-degree murder. Those charged are the owner of the Oxford Center, Tamala Peterson, her primary management assistant at the facility, Gary Markin, and the Oxford Center's safety manager, Jeffrey Mosteller. Each of those have been charged with alternative counts of involuntary manslaughter, meaning that a jury will be able to decide which charge properly befits their conduct. My office is confident that second-degree murder charges are appropriate for these individuals. This offense requires that the prosecution prove the defendant or defendants acted either with intent to kill or commit great harm, or, as specifically articulated in the law, to have acted in wanton and willful disregard of the likelihood that the natural tendency of said act would result in death. The jury instruction states it even more simply. To prove this charge, a prosecutor must prove that the defendant caused the death, that the death was not justified or excused, and that the defendant knowingly created a very high risk of death or great bodily harm, knowing that death or harm would be the likely result of their actions. We intend to demonstrate in court a series of actions undertaken by these defendants that satisfy these charges and tragically led to this child's death. Should a jury decide the state failed to meet this standard, they will have at their disposal the alternative charge of manslaughter. And to convict on this charge, the jury need only determine that the prosecution proved the defendant's actions caused the death of Thomas Cooper, that the death was not justified, and that in performing the acts that caused Thomas Cooper's death, the defendant acted in a grossly negligent manner. Additionally, we've also charged Alita Moffett, the operator of the hyperbaric chamber at the time the device incinerated young Thomas Cooper, who faces one count of involuntary manslaughter and one count of intentionally placing false information on a medical record as a medical provider. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion at the Oxford Center in Troy, Fire, Police, and Emergency Medical Services deployed to the scene of the explosion, and the Troy Police Department began an investigation into what occurred. My office was quickly in touch with the Troy Police to offer assistance. We made available to them our special investigative agents and whatever other resources they requested. And through this investigation, remained at all times under the leadership of Troy Police. And they've completed their criminal investigation and submitted their report and findings to our office, where our state prosecutors conducted a review for any and all potential criminal charges. In the course of this investigation, experts on hyperbaric chamber and treatments were consulted extensively, and some horrifying and simple conclusions were reached. Obviously, there will be much we cannot yet fully discuss or disclose until such items are entered into discovery or as evidence, but suffice it to say for now that the Oxford Center routinely operated sensitive and lethally dangerous hyperbaric chambers beyond their expected service lifetime and in complete disregard of vital safety measures and practices considered essential by medical and technical professionals. Hyperbaric chambers are not new technology, and there are, in fact, many national and international safety standards developed to ensure patient safety and appropriate use of such devices. To name only some of the safety standards completely disregarded by the Oxford Center staff on this tragic day were the daily maintenance check was not performed, the pre-dive safety check was not conducted with the now deceased patient, there was no medical doctor or safety supervisor on the premises at the time of the treatment was not performed by a licensed technician, yearly inspections of the hyperbaric chamber as suggested by the manufacturer were not conducted, and the essential patient-worn grounding strap was not used. To make money, as a business, the Oxford Center operated these machines and offered unfounded treatments to patients when medical science contradicted these uses of their services. This was an unscrupulous business operating powerful machines beyond their manufacturer's intended term of use on children's bodies over and over again to provide unaccredited and debunked so-called treatments, chiefly because it brought cash into the door. And as I detailed above, they did so in an egregious, willing, or wanton disregard for life-saving safety measures. Because these treatments were so medically unsound, patient insurance policies would not cover the use of these chambers to treat these conditions. The Oxford Center offered to heal or ease. So this business was a pure cash flow for-profit business. The Oxford Center, and of course, its owner as well, owner Tamala Peterson. Thomas Cooper, at just 5 years of age, died in an easily preventable tragedy occurring inside an unsafely operated medical device beyond its intended service years after a treatment not supported by medical science to treat the ailments from which he suffered at a facility that offered these services and managed these devices in defiance of international safety standards in accordance with whatever would provide them the most income or profit. Tamala Peterson, the owner of the Oxford Center, was arrested yesterday near her home and will be arraigned later today on one count of second-degree murder. Gary Markin, a primary manager of the Oxford Center, was arrested yesterday at his home and will be arraigned later today on one count of second-degree murder. Jeffrey Mosteller, the safety manager of the Oxford Center, was arrested yesterday in a traffic stop near his home and will be arraigned later today on one count of second-degree murder. And Alita Moffett, the operator of the hyperbaric chamber on the day of Thomas Cooper's death at the Oxford Center, was arrested yesterday at her home and will be arraigned later today on one count of involuntary manslaughter and one count of intentionally placing false information on a medical record as a medical provider. All defendants are currently housed at the Troy Police Lockup Facility, and each will likely be transferred to the Oakland County Jail following arraignment. Arraignments for each will take place before Magistrate Chiapelli in the 52-4 District Court in Troy. And I'd like to express my sincerest condolences to the Cooper family and my utmost appreciation to the officers of the Troy Police Department. This investigation, I know, was extremely difficult and had a tremendous impact on the Troy and Royal Oak communities. Let me thank you for your care and your great diligence on this matter. And with that, I will now take any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. First, we have Dustin with Crane. Dustin, if you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, I appreciate it. You know, we sort of knew that this was going on for a few years. Had your office been aware of the Oxford Center in previous years, or done any investigations? Because we know that they had complaints for other reasons, not to necessarily do with hyperbaric chambers, but had it been raised, and had you been aware of this in the past?
So there had been ongoing investigations, but that dealt more with the issue of fraud than it did the safety of the hyperbaric chamber. So that had not been an issue that we were aware of or had investigated. But there were other issues dealing with, again, issues related to fraud that were where we had ongoing investigations, and of course, previous convictions as well.
Thank you. Next I have Randy. Randy, what outlet are you with?
Channel 7, WXYZ TV. Thank you for the opportunity. A quick question for Attorney General Dana Nessel. These hyperbaric chambers often have fire suppression systems built into them so that if there is any sort of spark, it's immediately extinguished, et cetera, et cetera. Did the hyperbaric chamber in question have a fire suppression system installed and in working order?
So I think I'm going to allow my Criminal Bureau Chief, Daniel Hegeman-Clark, to answer that question. Danielle?
We do not believe that it had a fire suppression system on it.
Thank you. Next, we have Kristen Seamus. Kristen?
Hi, it's Kristen Seamus from the Detroit Free Press. I'm wondering if you can tell us whether there are any state, federal, or local oversight of hyperbaric oxygen chambers in Michigan. And is the Attorney General's office reviewing all facilities in the state that use this type of therapy now?
Right. So my understanding is that U.S. FDA regulates both the oxygen used in HBOT and in hyperbaric chambers. And then an organization called the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Society offers accreditation for centers who meet or exceed these standards. And then LARA is responsible for overseeing the license of medical professionals that the Oxford Center employs. And the Oxford Center employs one medical doctor on their staff who was not on site that day. And outside of that, Michigan law doesn't require any oversight over the use of hyperbaric chambers. So without having some sort of probable cause to believe that there are crimes being committed involving hyperbaric chambers in other places in the state, we wouldn't have the authority to go in and perform an inspection. And as we noted, like Lara does not have the capability to do that either because they're not licensed within the state. But with that, I mean, there's certainly advice that we can give to individuals or to families who are considering this kind of treatment that I think is important. So for instance, always exercise caution before engaging in any unapproved therapies. For instance, this one, hyperbaric chambers are not an approved therapy for ADHD, but the Oxford Center boasted over 100 diagnoses that HBOT could help with, while the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Society only lists 15. Additionally, the Oxford Center offered training and certification program in which one of our defendants, Mr. Mosteller, provided training to other hyperbaric chambers. And I'd strongly encourage any facility that or the ICHT certification to immediately contact the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Society for accreditation and additional training. Also, the FDA recommends that you check with your healthcare provider before using an HBOT device to make sure that you're pursuing what's appropriate care. And if an HBOT is recommended, the FDA encourages you to go to a hospital or facility that has been inspected and is properly accredited by the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Society, and the Oxford Center simply was not. So the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs maintains a free public license verification website for those that are interested. So please, if you're interested in this kind of therapy, take the time to verify claimed licenses and certifications of providers, particularly when those positions involve sensitive work or contact with vulnerable populations. And we know that this is a type of therapy that, while it can be helpful for certain types of medical issues, it has to be used properly. This can be very, very dangerous. We're talking about 100% pure oxygen inside one of these chambers, so very flammable, and it has to be utilized correctly. And obviously, we are alleging that in this set of circumstances, it absolutely was not.
Thank you. Next, we have Elizabeth Chuck. Elizabeth, can you say what outlet you're with, please?
Yes, hi, good morning. Elizabeth here from NBC News. I have two quick questions. The first is, I know that the Oxford Center has a second location. Has that second location been shut down, or is that being investigated as well, given the seriousness of these charges? And then second quick question, are you able to tell us any more details about the allegations of falsified medical records that one defendant is facing?
Danielle, I'm going to throw this one to you.
Thank you for the question, Elizabeth. As it relates to the Oxford Center in Brighton, it is under investigation as it relates to the falsification of medical records. I'm sorry, but in order to be able to preserve the integrity of the investigation as well as this case, that information will come out at our preliminary exam.
Thank you.
And Kristen, you had your hand up for a follow-up. Do you not need that anymore?
Well, the question was just about whether the Troy Center and the Brighton Center were continuing to operate or whether they've been shut down.
Perfect. Okay, last chance for last questions. Great, seeing no more. Oh, Sarah Wright, what outlet are you with, please?
I am with the Troy Times. I just was wondering, with the state of these machines, as you said, many of them were not being safety checked in a way, would they have any effect on other patients that were using them? Like, would there be any negative impacts as they were used and they were not being maintained as well as they could be?
Yep, that's the basis of our allegation here, is that because they were not maintained properly, that those defendants involved should have known that there, was a chance, a reasonable chance that we would see this kind of outcome. So that really forms the basis of our allegations.
But would this affect other, do you think this would have effects on other patients? Like, could other patients like seek litigation because of this potential safety concerns?
Well, I think you would have to have some sort of harm come to you, right? And so because this was an instance, obviously, where a death resulted.
Kristen with the Free Press.
Thanks. I'm curious about whether there's any information you can share with us about how that initial spark was ignited in the hyperbaric chamber that killed Thomas Cooper.
We know how it happened, but Danielle, do you think it's appropriate at this time for us to answer that question? Or do you think we should wait for that to come out at the preliminary exam?
I think it's appropriate for it to be further addressed at the preliminary exam.
Okay. Yeah, there'll be a detailed explanation of exactly how that happened, and we know how it happened. But that'll be discussed later during the exam.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more questions, if anyone has a question as the day continues, please email agpress@mi.gov, and thank you all for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.